And welcome to our Sun Devils podcast. I'm Howard Balzer with our Arizona State gurus, Donnie Druin and Millard Thomas. One day after Arizona State opened its season at home, of course, against Southern Utah with a 41-14 victory. And certainly we saw good things. We saw some things that you wish we hadn't seen, certainly. But, one thing that you look at is the Thunderbirds, Southern Utah, played last Saturday, so they're playing on a short week. Maybe that was good for them. I don't know. But they lost 45-14 to San Jose State. So the odds makers thought it would be larger. I'm sure fans thought it would be. So, guys, just overall, in terms of this first outing for Arizona State, your reactions to what we saw at Sun Devil Stadium on Thursday evening?
Yeah, for me, I'm probably not going to make too much of a fuss from this game. I'm not going to have major takeaways because it was against Southern Utah. I don't want to disrespect the program, but ASU was a 44.5-point favorite against them. So it's not like ASU has bludgeoned a lot of teams in the past, except for the Wildcats last year. So the ASU Sun Devils, they did a good job, I guess good enough of a job putting 41 points on the board. Yes, it was sloppy. Yes, they didn't look like they were totally in tune with all those penalties, but hey, still got some interesting plays from a Ricky Pearsall. The running backs look nasty. So overall, there was definitely some things I liked from ASU. They won their 22nd consecutive home opener. And it was also the first win in program history against Southern Utah. So some interesting, notes from this game. And overall, I'm probably not going to make some major takeaways from this game. We'll probably delve a little bit deeper into the negatives, but I'm fine with how ASU played in their first game in front of fans, 45,000 fans at that after like 600 days of not doing it.
And Donnie, a lot of yellow flags on the field.
Too many, Howard. Too many. It was ridiculous. I feel like the first quarter at least lasted over an hour for sure. I am not doubting that at all. Maybe close to an hour and a half. 13 penalties for 135 yards. And, I wrote an article on AllSunDevils.com. Excuse me, go check that out. Where Arizona State hasn't had that many penalty yards in a game since 2006. You're talking about 15 years. 1-5, and to give ASU fans a point of reference, Vontaze Burfict, notorious peacemaker in the NFL, managed to not somehow not reach that amount of penalty yards. Just absolutely crazy, bonkers. And, for a team going into the first week of the season, whether it was nerves, whether it was playing in front of fans, you simply can't do that. But I'm not willing to plant any flags. I'm not willing to say ASU is going to the Pac-12 title game. I'm not willing to say they're not going to hit 6 wins this year based off of one game. But there's no doubt about it. Arizona State has a lot of work to cut out in front of them in order to kind of reach the steps that they plan on doing. And obviously next week they host UNLV at home. But not to look a little bit too further into the future, but you can't do this against teams like Washington, teams like USC, and teams like Utah. Absolutely not. But, super easy to overreact week one of the season. Arizona State, they got the win. They remained relatively healthy coming out of it. And that's pretty much all the coaching staff could have asked for.
And I guess a silver lining is that with 11 of those penalties and 120 yards in the first half, they were only 2 for 15 in the second half. And so personal fouls, you could say that was, guys just wanting to get out there and hit somebody, but it did calm down in the second half. So that's a positive. Let's direct it towards, everyone knew that the strength of this team, beyond we know the athletic ability and all the things that Jaden Daniels can do at quarterback, and we'll get to his physical situation in a moment. But everyone knew that a lot of what Arizona State does would be in the running game. And certainly they did that last night with the dynamic duo. And of course, Daniels added 40 yards to that output. They rushed for 222 yards. So certainly maybe it's what everyone expected, but at least they fulfilled those expectations with the running game and of course scoring a bunch of touchdowns on the ground also.
Yeah, I just absolutely love this running game. I mean, Chip, he's nasty. He's that physical bruiser. He's like 5'11", 6 foot. He's like 235. He's just trying to run straight through you. Rashad White, he's like that north-south kind of guy, more explosive out the backfield. And then Daniel Nyata, I mean, we saw him big time in the second half because ASU was up so much. They really just want to run the ball and not, keep their starters out there on the field. And Nyata, I like the way he looks too. He looks more of a multi-purpose back that could go out there and catch in the passing game. He looks pretty strong. He's a little bit smaller, but he still looks pretty strong. So I love the three-headed backfield by ASU. And if you add Jaden Daniels into the mix too, this should be a nasty run game for the entire season.
Yeah, guys, this just when water is wet and Arizona State can run the football until the lights go off in the stadium. I mean, a team that led the Pac-12 in average rushing yards per game last year comes out in week 1 and picks up exactly where they left off. And I think, Millard, you hit the nail on the head whenever you said that between guys like Chainham and White, you mix in the running talents of Jaden Daniels, you mix in Zach Hill's creativeness as an offensive coordinator to get guys like Ricky Parasol the ball in open space. And we saw a wide receiver reverse touchdown that he had scored last night off of that exact play. I mean, imagine trying to be a defensive coordinator and trying to game plan for this running game. You simply can't. And the Sun Devils' ability to run the football over and over and over again, demoralizing for a defense. You don't see that a lot, especially in the Pac-12. You see 50, 60-point games all the time in this conference with teams that love to throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. Not Arizona State. They are going to run the football no matter the time, no matter the quarter. And for the most part, it pans out to be usually successful, and we saw a lot of that on Thursday night.
Yeah, the Sun Devils, they have 19 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 games. Just disgusting from them.
That's a bunch, and of course, certainly one of those games is Arizona, so that obviously added to it. Before we get to the defense, is there any update on the situation with Jaden Daniels? I know the broadcasters are saying, they think it might be cramps. Do we have any more information on that situation, guys?
Donnie?
None that I know of. They asked him after the game, and Jaden Daniels said he was fine. Now, granted, that's a football player just wanting to make sure everything's calm and smooth after a game. Whenever he initially came out of the locker room and rejoined the team, he tried to put his helmet on. He tried to come back in the game, and I think if it was a little bit more of a serious game with more consequences, he would have been back out there. But I did notice just a little bit of a limp. He was walking kind of gingerly on the sideline. But at the end of the day, these guys are football players. They're always going to try to get back on the field. I'm not worried about his status. I don't think it was confirmed whether or not they actually found out if he had cramps or whatever it might be, because he was on the field for at least 5 minutes during the game. But you know what? He said he was fine. So I think at this point, that's all we can really take his word for.
Hey, let me tell you, I'm no football player. I'm no athlete, but a couple months back, I was running on the treadmill and I caught a couple cramps in my calves. I was down for about 2 days. I had to crawl back up my stairs to my apartment. Like, Charlie horses in your calves are no joke. So I understand Jaden Daniels. I feel for you, and I know what you're going through, buddy.
If that is it, then yeah, that's what you hope it was, certainly, and that it isn't anything else, which I'm sure we'll find out later in the week. Let's flip it over to the defense, and of course the takeaways, big plays, interceptions early in the game when it looked like Southern Utah might get into position to possibly even take a lead. Big interceptions. So talk about you always want that from your defense. Aaron always says you want takeaways, as if you can just magically make them happen. A lot of times they just come with being aggressive, being in the right place at the right time, obviously, and having athletes who can do that. So talk about that defense and the way they were able to make those big plays in this game.
Yeah, I mean, ASU, they took no time with the takeaways. 30 seconds into the game, they brought some pressure. They brought like 6 guys, and their new transfer from LSU was able to get the pressure on the quarterback that forced him that interception to DeAndre Pierce. So he was able to get an interception. Darian Butler, the captain, he had a couple too. His first 2 interceptions in his career, I mind you, too. So ASU did a good job taking the ball away. There was still some mistakes by them. Southern Utah was able to move the ball down the field on a few of their possessions. It was a little bend but don't break by ASU, but still, again, first game, they only played a handful of them last year. Like, I'm going to give this team a couple more games. I want a larger sample size before I take any major takeaways from these games.
And despite Arizona State's ability to run the ball, I feel like a lot of people can point to the defensive side of the ball as a strong point for the Sun Devils. We're talking about a team who had 10 of its 11 starters be named to the Senior Bowl 2022 watch list, which is simply incredible. Speaking to not only the talent, but just the experience and the veteran leadership that all of those guys bring on the defensive side of the field. Howard, like you already mentioned, there were a couple times throughout the game where Southern Utah was knocking on the door. They were ready to score. They were ready to make it a game and definitely throw out anybody who had ASU with the 45-point spread. But linebacker Darian Butler stepped up twice, like Millard had said, intercepted those passes, just great reads. And obviously DeAndre Pierce had the initial pick on, the Southern Utah's basically first drive of the game. And just a phenomenal. And then, like Howard said a little bit earlier, you can't pick turnovers out of thin air. You can't be told by a coach to go get a turnover and actually do it, unless your name is Lawrence Taylor, or, TJ Watt, or any of those guys, Ed Reed. But at the end of the day, this is a defense that led the Pac-12 in average turnovers created per game last year in 2020. And much like the run game, it picked up exactly where it left off. And you absolutely love to see it because more often than not, turnovers, you can't really gauge when they're going to come. But turnovers are a good sign that your defense is stepping up and rising to the occasion whenever it needs to.
Yeah, ASU right now gives me like the vibes of like the 2010s, like Seahawks. Like they want to be ground and pound. They want to run the ball first, and then they want to play, rely on their defense. And they're not trying to make mistakes. That's why it was so frustrating for them to see all those penalties, because this is a team that just wants to play clean football. They just want to run the ball down your throat, and they just want to have a solid defense to back them up. They want to bend and not break. So for ASU last night to see all those penalties, I know Coach Herm Edwards was not happy because I know he went halftime to Rashad White and Jaden Daniels, and he was like, man, we're playing some bad football out here right now. I'm being a bad coach. But hey, in the second half, they limited their penalties to just 2. So I guess the message got across to the team.
And you mentioned Butler. He just looks like one of those enthusiastic guys that just gets guys going. Obviously, when you come up with a couple interceptions, that certainly helps. But he just looks to be one of those guys that really, really gets his teammates going and is energized all the time he's on the field.
Yeah, I think the right term for him would be battery, because the energy he provides for all those guys on the defensive side of the ball, especially whenever a guy like Tyler Johnson gets ejected in the middle of the first quarter and Jermaine Lole is already out for the entire season with, the torn triceps. Those are 2 very big names on Arizona State's front seven, that they lost, before even really getting the season going. So somebody needed to step up. The secondary kind of played a little bit too shaky for me last night. It had to be one of those linebackers, and Butler rose to the occasion. And, all props to him, because I don't want to say he single-handedly led the Arizona State Sun Devils to all those turnovers and to the win, but he played a very, very big role.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was a huge role. And the Sun Devils did a good job of manufacturing pressure. Like they knew their opponent. They knew they were playing a Southern Utah program that probably shouldn't really match up with them. So they were trying to apply that pressure. They were trying to bring multiple bodies to their quarterback, 4, 5, 6-man pressure at times. And they were trying to get in their face and create havoc. And when the quarterbacks did see all those defenders around him in the pocket, it did make him a little nervous, got a little happy feet, and would release the ball too quickly, which usually ended up in Darian Butler's hands. So I was a little impressed with the D line. I guess the trenches on both sides. I thought the line on both sides did a pretty solid job last night.
Well, playing on Thursday, of course, gives you some extra time before they play again at home on next Saturday against UNLV. Do we know much about UNLV yet, or is this just a matter of we'll find out a whole lot more during the week?
I can tell you that they lost in, I believe it was overtime last night, to a FCS opponent. So that does not help any UNLV case at all to think that they might go into Sun Devil Stadium and upset Arizona State. But, college football is such a crazy week-to-week game. I mean, teams can look so much different night and day than what they did the week prior. But if you're Arizona State and, you see UNLV drop games to an opponent similar to Southern Utah, you really got to like your chances, especially now that you got all of those turnovers and all of those flags out of your system now.
Yeah, and I haven't done my prep work just yet for this ASU versus UNLV game. I'm still recapping last night's game and doing some of the work for that. So we will dive into UNLV's game, and we will be doing another podcast next week on that after the game. But for ASU going into next week's game, I mean, like what Donnie's talked about, like we've talked about, Howard, like we just want to see ASU clean up these penalties next week, and we probably want to see a little bit more explosiveness from their passing game. I feel like you probably didn't need to see it last night because the run game worked so well, and just the kind of flow the game was going to have. You probably didn't need to throw it all over the field, but I did see Curtis Hodges with a couple catches. You did hit Andre Johnson. Jaden Daniels did down the field as well for a 31-yard catch. And Ricky Pearsall, he's someone we just got to keep our eyes on because, like you said earlier, Donnie, he had that end around. He ran it in for a touchdown. He had a couple grabs. He even threw a pass as well. So if you're a wide receiver, can do a little bit of everything just like that. I mean, this ASU offense has a lot of different playmakers, and they're all dynamic. I mean, from Niata to Chip to Pearsall to a bunch of their receivers, no one is really one-dimensional. What I love about this ASU offense is they have a lot of versatility. They could kill you in a lot of different ways.
Do you see any one player emerging as a receiver, or do you think it's probably going to be one of those units where a lot of different guys contribute through the season? Because like you said, Miller, it looks like they have a bunch of guys who can play, but maybe not just that one obvious standout. And who knows, maybe someone will emerge, but I'm curious your guys' take on that.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be more just like we always hear running backs by committee. I feel like it's going to be more of a wide receiver by committee. I feel like they may not have a true number one because all these guys I feel like are similar in talent and skill level. So that's a good thing for them. Their depth is going to be deep. I mean, they have like 5 really good four-star, 5-star wide receivers in that room.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like ASU is just going to be throwing out a different guy out there every week. And we'll see who's going to have the big game because I think they're going to, like how you say, ride the hot hand with running backs. I think they're going to ride the hot hand with their wide receivers.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what personnel. I mean, we did see a lot of 4 wide receiver sets from the Sun Devils last night, and there's just so much to this offense that offensive coordinators Jack Hill can bring to the table, and it's only week 1, so we've yet to really see all of the layers of the offense truly peeled back. But in terms of guys emerging, I mean, like Howard said, there's so many guys that can really come out and be used in really any scenario. But if we're picking guys right now, I mean, obviously Pearsall had a phenomenal game last night. Johnny Wilson looked pretty good, and Andre Johnson seems to be able to find the ball pretty well whenever it comes to going up and getting it over defenders. So pretty much a guy you need for any situation. ASU has him in their back pocket. I mean, LV Bunkley Shelton is another guy to watch out for as well. There's just so many names littered across the depth chart, not enough playing time for everybody. So maybe a week by week basis, but the 3 receivers that we saw most of the last night in those 3 wide receiver sets are going to be Johnny Wilson, Andre Johnson, and then Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, and I think Bunkley Shelton also had a touchdown called back in that game. So you could have had an even bigger game. And basically, ASU's wide receiver is kind of like a basketball team. I mean, they got so many dudes. I mean, Curtis Hodges is like 6'8", Johnson's 6'3". I think Johnny Wilson's like 6'6". They have so many dudes, 6'1", 6'2", or taller. Like, this team is just huge. And Jaden Daniels, like, if he's feeling the pressure from behind, like, just throw it up, man. One of those guys are going to go get it.
So the big question, Donnie, before we wrap up this All Sun Devils podcast is, did the team led by Jaden Daniels have a pizza party after the game? Did they have the pizza delivered perhaps to the stadium? Although I don't know what time his NIL restaurant is open on weeknights, or maybe they're going to have a little pizza party. Maybe they're having it as we speak. Maybe they're having it today on Saturday. What do you think?
It's funny you say that because people might not catch this, but on Friday, Jaden Daniels actually has a meet and greet at Venezia's Pizza, a day after the game to go and, meet fans and kind of hang out and, hopefully get a little bit of dough for the dough named after him.
Yeah,
Literally
exactly.
dough.
Well, we'll see about that. And he's obviously hoping a lot of people. What is it? JD5 is the name of the
JD5 pizza. Yep.
JD5's got an awful lot of toppings on it, so you got to go with a big appetite for that.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't yet eat dinner last night when that ad came on the stream for the game. So I was getting a little hungry when I saw that JD5 pizza. It looked pretty tasty. Venice's is only a couple miles up the street from me. So I've definitely, and I go to the LA Fitness right next to it. So there's definitely been a few nights where I've gone to the LA Fitness and then grabbed some pizza on the way home.
Well, that's the way to do it.
It's a very good pizza. If anybody's listening, and especially you guys, JD5 pizza is the way to go. I don't even like mushrooms, and I ate everything on it. That's how great it was.
All right. Well, fitting that we ended with a talk about pizza after a 41-14 victory for Arizona State on Thursday night. Again, next Saturday, it's UNLV at Sun Devils Stadium. And just keep it right here for more podcasts of the All Sun Devils podcast. And, of course, go to AllSunDevils.com or SunDevils.com.
AllSunDevils.com.
AllSunDevils.com. That's what I thought. And for all the written content about the team and everything going on about it. So we'll wrap up this podcast for Millard Thomas and Donnie Druin. I'm Howard Balzer, and have a great week as Arizona State's 1-0 and tries to go 2-0 next week against the Rebels of Nevada, Las Vegas.